Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Care Meets Code, Defining Responsible AI in Care. We will get started in just a moment, but we're just going to give people some time to join. Thank you to the very many of you who've been incredibly prompt with joining already. But in case there's any issues, we'll just probably start about 2 minutes past. Right, I think numbers are starting to stabilize, so I think we'll make a start on the webinar. Thank you again to everybody for joining us today in the first of a 4-part series that we're doing all about AI in social care. We will provide links to all of the other events in this series at the end of the session and provide you a little bit more detail. So my name's Katie Thorne. I'm the digital project lead at the Digital Care Hub, and we've been doing a lot of work with Casson Consulting and the Institute of Ethics and AI at Oxford University for the last couple of years about responsible use of AI in care. And my colleague Caroline, who's on the call, will introduce herself in a moment, and we'll give you more of an overview of that shortly. In the meantime, just some brief housekeeping for everybody. So this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording of the session probably later on this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning, dependent on time. There is a transcription option as well for this webinar. You may have seen that just pop up. If you do need captions or transcription, please do feel free to enable that, and we can also share a transcription afterwards. All attendees are on mute and we can't see you. So if you have any questions, please do use the question and answer function. It is at the bottom of your screen, or if you're on mobile, you might have to click on more and then Q&A, and that way we can keep track of any questions throughout this webinar. Please do feel free though to use the chat to introduce yourselves, say where you have come from, talk to each other about AI. I think sometimes it can be really helpful to have lots and lots of learning happening at the same time as people are speaking. And of course, you will also get access to the presentation after this session, and any resources which are mentioned, we will also email to you afterwards as well. So you don't need to worry too much about note-taking unless that's your preference. So without further ado then, I will pass over to Caroline. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Katie, for the introduction. I'm always, when you actually get my whole surname there on one slide, I'm always amazed. But yeah, so thank you for that. And it's great to have you all here. So just to introduce myself before I go into the project, I am the Director of Research at the Institute for Ethics in AI at Oxford University. So I've got a heavy administrative role there, but my research is all about AI and long-term care and human rights. So I've got a human rights background and a background in gerontology, and now I'm translating that work into AI ethics. So next slide, please. We've got an hour together. We will make this interactive, as Katie has already said. Unfortunately, I can't see you, but I know you are there. And I hope that we'll be able to have some time to discuss later on. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce you to the work that Katie and Daniel and a lot of people have been doing in the past year or two around the responsible use of particularly generative AI in adult social care. And it's really great to not be usually when I do presentations, I've got no one else to draw on, but I've actually got Katie and Daniel here if I lose my words or my train of thought. But yeah, so we'll be doing this presentation together. But before I get started with our project, I'm going to give a bit of an overview of what AI is, and particularly also what large language models are. So generally a tiny little overview of generative AI. So AI is one of those concepts, a little bit like dignity. We sort of know what it is when we see it, but it's very hard to define, right? And it's certainly something I don't actually have an AI or computer science background. And it's something I really had to learn when I first started my work at the Institute for Ethics in AI, is trying to, get my head around how do we define AI. And there are lots of different definitions going around here, but the one that I really like to use comes from the book Snake Oil from Arvind Narayanan and Sayesh Kapoor. So that's a very good book if you've not come across it yet, AI Snake Oil. And the way that they define AI is not so much about, let's have one definition, that's what it is, but they more say, when might a system, a technological system, when might the label AI be appropriate? And they ask 3 questions that we can use to try and identify AI. So the first question is, does the task that the system performs usually require creative effort or training for a human to perform? And if the answer to that is yes, then the label AI might be appropriate. So for example, generative AI is a type of AI systems, and usually we'd need a created effort or training for whatever generative AI is creating. A human would need that creative effort to perform. And so the label AI might be appropriate for these type of systems, or indeed is. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a bit more detail later. So was the system directly specified on code by the developer, or did it indirectly emerge by learning from examples? So if here the answer is it did indirectly emerge by learning from examples, then the label AI might also be very much appropriate. So for example, if we go into an AI tool to diagnose breast cancer, it will have been trained on a lot of data of various pictures of breast cancers. Yeah. So then the third question is, does the system make decisions more or less autonomously and possess some degree of flexibility and adaptability to the environment? If the answer here is yes, then again, the label AI might be appropriate. And an example of that would be self-driving cars that have also been trained on a lot of data around them. They make decisions more or less autonomously and need that degree of flexibility. For what it's worth and how good they are at the moment. But here again, we could be speaking of AI systems. So you see, AI is a very broad, very, very broad term, and it's being used quite massively at the moment, referring to generative AI specifically. And that's the type of AI systems we've been focusing on with our work on social care. Next slide, please. So when we define generative AI, it really refers to a subset of artificial intelligence or machine learning that focuses all on creating new type of content. So that might be, generating new texts, it might be new images, videos, music, code, in fact, and is thereby often mimicking human activity. So you'll see here that slide has actually been generated by generative AI system. Specifically, I've been using OpenAI's ChatGPT for this. Not that I'm doing any kind of advertising here. All systems are different, and they're all I'll just stop here. Anyway, so this was ChatGPT, and I'd be really interested to hear from you if you could put it in the chat. And I don't know whether you can put your hands up or anyone can see how many of you are already using generative AI, such as ChatGPT or Copilot, or other systems, maybe also for video or so. I can see here the hands going up in your everyday life. Okay, so quite a few of you. Yeah. Okay, so let's go a little bit more into how generative AI actually works. So next slide, please. Can you go one more slide, because we were actually supposed, this is supposed, no, okay, let's go back. I left out one slide. Okay, so if we go into generative AI, that is specifically about generating new text. And many of us are already using those, right? Those systems in our life. And that might be for all sorts of different tasks. Maybe for, oh, give me a recipe. I've got these different types of foods in my fridge. ChatGPT, and I'm just going to use ChatGPT as an example, give me a recipe on how I could use these food items. It will generate a recipe for that. So these types of generative AI we refer to are often powered by something called large language models. There are also small language models, but let's just stick with the large language models, which are all behind that force, behind those big open systems that we can all access and use. And these are, in a nutshell, really powerful word prediction systems. So I always like to, when I try and explain this, I always like to go back to smaller word predictors that we maybe know. If we have a smartphone and you are typing a text message to somebody, and you often type a text message to that one person, your phone might already be able to predict what that text message is going to say. So, you know, if you're writing to your partner, I'm going to be late tonight because I'm going to the pub, you might be starting to write to your partner, I am late today because, and then your phone might fill in because I'm going to the pub. That's because your phone, specifically that app you're using, has learned that you quite often write to your partner telling them that you're late because you're going to the pub. So it's learned how to predict what you're going to say. And in essence, that's what large language models also are. The difference is that they haven't just been trained on, you know, whatever you are saying to your partner, they've been trained on the entire internet of things. And therefore, it's all of human knowledge and text and everything that we've got on the internet that's within those, or that's powering those large language models. So whoever has used these type of systems, they are really impressive. I mean, whatever they come up with, and, you know, I'm starting to use them more and more in my everyday life, also to throw around some ideas that I've got, or to help me try and improve some text I've written or so. And they are really, really impressive. And often they really sound like they actually know what they're talking about. You may have also heard or maybe used them in a context where people are feeling like they can talk to one of those systems because they're feeling depressed or they've got a personal problem or so. And then often these responses, and, you know, those big companies behind those systems are trying to work on improving the way that these systems interact with us all the time. They often sound really empathetic, and they actually sound like, you know, they know something about you as a person. And therefore, we do have that problem, and I will call it a problem, that people actually feel like large language models, whatever systems we're using here, are systems that understand, that have, you know, are sort of in a way human-like. But of course, they do not understand as we do as human. That's because they are technology, they are a system. So it does have a different type of understanding, like it's got a statistical understanding. And we could now go into the nitty gritty, and I'm not even going to really try that because I'm not a computer scientist, but I do understand the, you know, a little bit how these large language models work. I'm not going to go into how that all works, but, you know, it is basically about statistics and how words come with each other and in what relationship they have. So large language models do have a statistical understanding of human language, right? And how we use that human language with each other. But they do not understand our context. They do not really have empathy. It can mimic empathy, but it doesn't have empathy. And one of the, you know, biggest topics at the moment with these big companies, also smaller AI companies around the world, is that they are trying to create something called AGI, so artificial general intelligence, which would then be, and there again, lots of different definitions. Various companies define AGI in a different way, but basically where we could think of artificial intelligence really becoming more human-like. And there are also then debates of, it's going to become more powerful than humans and have more empathy than humans. And therefore, we'd also need to look into a rights agenda and so on. So this is something that's going on within the AI field, and AGI, artificial general intelligence, is one of those big goals that everyone is racing towards. And if you ask computer scientists and you ask them, when do you think AGI is going to be here and arrive? Some will say we're very close. Some will say it's at least another 20 to 25 years. And some will say it will never arrive. And it really also depends on how you define it. And me working at the Institute for Ethics in AI with philosophers, I think it's also about, us as humans and what we believe we are in essence, and whether a technical system can ever be human-like or not. Anyway, so those are some of the philosophical questions. So that was my whistle-stop tour trying to define AI and generative AI, and more specifically, large language models. So how does all of that translate into social care and what we've been doing? And in order to do that, I need to go into some of the technical limitations of large language models. And we are going to stick with generative AI specifically for language generation, so text generation, video and all of that. Pictures also really important, but let's stick with that. So some of the technical limitations that we are seeing with also these very, very broad systems, Copilot and so on, and we're trying to work around that. Companies are trying to improve these limitations all the time, but they're still here and very much. And they also depend on how they're being used. This system is, first of all, data privacy. So let's just start with a very practical hypothesis. You've got very private data, either about yourself or about somebody else, and you put that into a system such as ChatGPT and you press send. What happens is that you send it into the world, right? You send it back into ChatGPT, which is using that data then also to improve its systems. And what can actually happen is that theoretically that data could pop up somewhere else. We've also just heard that specifically with that one system, there's a little button where you can press share. And what will then happen is that it actually, whatever you have, the communication you've had with that system actually becomes publicly available. So people could search for it on Google and they would find it. And that means that if people have, for example, had a conversation about their mental health or about a struggle or so, and they pressed share because they wanted to share it with a friend or a colleague or someone they trust, what they wouldn't have known is that they're actually sharing it with the world. So there are different layers of data privacy issue here around these systems. The point is there's a very concrete data privacy and confidentiality aspect here that, particularly in social care, is very important. We've already spoken about how these models, even though they sound like they know what they're talking about, and in a way they do, I guess, they cannot contextualize. So they do not know who you are, where you are, what the situation is. They're just going into their web prediction mode. And that, again, is really important for social care, which is very much about context, about the here and now, about the person we're talking about, we're working with, who's using the system. Another technical limitation is hallucinations and misinformation or unaligned information. I'm sure you've heard about that before. These systems can make up lies. And even though it might sound completely truthful and it sounds reasonable, it's very possible that it's just a lie or at least misinformed. So again, if somebody types in a question, for example, someone in my home has just fallen, I don't know how to help them up, give me some information how to do that. It might be a very good response that you're getting from the generative AI system you're using. However, it might be not very good practice, or it might be completely misinformed. And if you then go about it in that way, you might actually do more harm than good. So that's just an example. Another problem is the issue of alignment, value alignment. So I'll give you the example of bias here. So we're going to go into bias in a minute anyway. So let's have that little bridge. Bias we see, for example, when it comes to ageism and to racism, is that these systems, as they have been trained on the whole of the internet, they have also consumed the biases in humans, and that we see in outputs too. So there was quite a shocking example, which I haven't got a slide here, but it's just an example from one of those systems in the US. It was used in the US last year by a student, specifically talking about care of older people. So that student represented himself as an older person looking for care and asking, you know, should I be allowed or should I be getting care, and what kind of care should I be getting? And then the system responded something along the lines of, no, you're not worthy of care anymore. And it was a horrible response, but it shows the shocking bias that we can get within these systems that are quite obvious. And that means they're also unaligned with our ideas of equality, of non-discrimination, and so on. But they can also be, you know, quite blatantly biased, but they can also be biased in a way that we might not actually pick up in when we read it, because we're all subject to our own, let's say, blind spots and our own biases. So that means that these systems, even though they themselves have technical limitations, they're also limited by the way that we as humans use them and how we know to use them safely, what kind of trust we put into them, and also, you know, where we know to look elsewhere or not. Okay, so now let's go into our project. And I'm just looking at the clock. I can't believe we've already got 20 minutes. So I'm going to try and...
Lots of time, Caroline. Don't rush. It's fine.
Okay, thank you. So I've just introduced this project, and then Katie, maybe I'll hand over to you for a little bit of the time so that people don't get bored. I think it's nice to have different voices. But yeah, let me first introduce you to the what we call the Oxford Project on the Responsible Use of AI in Social Care. So, gosh, it's been nearly 2 years back now that Katie and Daniel and I met online, and we had a chat. And I don't even know why we came together, but we started to, you know, want to meet and to talk with each other. And what we spoke about in that conversation is, oh, you know, yeah, we're using ChatGPT and the like Copilot now in our everyday lives. We wonder how that's playing out in social care. And all of us from our different backgrounds saw some use cases of the use of these generative AI systems, which had just kind of emerged and really, you know, been a big thing in AI development, because AI has been around for a long time. But what these new generative AI models have done is they've really, in a way, I'm using the word now, and, you know, in a way that is democratized AI, let's say. And what I mean by that is that people can easily access these systems. They know it's AI, and they are to be used across different sectors and use cases. So that's why it's such an important development in AI history. And we said, okay, so how is this playing out in social care? Knowing about some of these technical limitations, knowing about the field, and then looking at the landscape of regulation and guidance that was out there, or rather not out there at the time, for social care. So even though we saw more and more guidance emerge in other sectors on how to use generative AI safely, we couldn't find anything in the UK by the Department of Health and Social Care or the Care Quality Commission or local authorities, or in other country contexts. So we said, okay, this is interesting and it's important and urgent. So let's have a look what people in social care think about this. How have they started using these systems? Are they concerned about it? Are they excited about it? And what is it that the care community in the UK needs in order to leverage the potentials of generative AI for social care, but also to do that in a way that we understand the risks We know how to respond to harms. So we called for a roundtable, which took place in February last year at the University of Oxford at Reuben College. And we had around 25 to, 30 representatives from the care community with us. And together we explored these questions. So how are you already using it? Are you excited? Are you concerned about it? And what is it that we need? And we published a statement from that roundtable, which was really the kickoff of that project and the collaboration, the cross-sector collaboration that then followed that. So next slide, please. So what was in that statement? I think that statement was very much capturing the sense of urgency that everybody at that roundtable felt to respond to the lack of guidance and sort of official guidance and good practice knowledge around the use of generative AI in social care. So we said we urgently need to develop a shared co-produced framework to underpin the responsible use. And here again, the second part here that I've put in, again, you'll see the word co-produce actionable guidelines. So with co-production, we felt everybody in that room, even though the roundtable was quite small with only around 30 people, we felt that this work has to be co-produced right from the start, meaning that the voices of people with lived and living experience of social care need to be right at the center of it, as well as care workers, as well as family caregivers, care providers, policymakers, and importantly, also tech providers. So we felt this really needs to be a shared approach. And together, we first of all need to make sense of what it means to have responsible AI in this field. What does that mean? And what is it that we, as people in the care community, want to protect when it comes to AI? And what is it that we want AI to do to benefit us? So next slide, please. So Katie, maybe I can hand over to you so you tell everybody a little bit about that year of co-production and collaboration, which then took us to all of these, and more of these resources that you see there. Katie, is that okay?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, so it became a very busy year, I think it's fair to say. And as Caroline mentioned, it felt really important to us that we had lots of different representatives from all different parts of the care sector coming together to give their views. So the approach we chose to take was to set up different working groups for people from different parts of the sector. So there was several working groups of people with lived experience and friend and family carers. There was a separate working group for care providers, so care homes, home care, supported living organisations. Generally, people in those groups were senior leadership positions who would have decision-making powers around what technology is being used in their service. There was a separate working group which was run with the Care Workers Charity for frontline care and support workers, who often were the people who were using this technology but didn't necessarily get to choose how that technology was used in their day-to-day work. And then also had a group looking at the ethics of this piece, which was chaired by Donald McCaskill from Scottish Care, and then a group of tech suppliers. As Caroline mentioned, we felt it was very important for industry to be involved, which Daniel, who is joined us on the panel, was chairing alongside Tech UK, and we'll go into a bit more detail on that group further on in the presentation. So each of these individual groups obviously had their own concerns and their own excitement about what the potential of using artificial intelligence would be. Some groups were really, really positive. Some people were very, very negative, I think it's fair to say, about this as an emerging technology. And that ran across all groups. So over the course of the year, each of the individual groups developed their own guidance or output of what they wanted. So, for example, the care providers developed some top tips for adopting AI, as well as consolidating some case studies, and we'll share all of these resources at the end. And the Care Workers Charity put out a statement on behalf of care workers about sort of their expectations around the use of AI, and these are all available freely on our website. But then, in order to have something which is usable and which we can come together as a social care sector to say, we thought it was important to bring all of the groups together to say, okay, everybody's had their individual voices from their individual roles of what they're doing. What can we all say collaboratively, whether you are somebody developing technology to somebody who is using technology at work or to somebody who is interested in using this as part of your care and support package? What are the things we all agree on? And so we ran 4 virtual sessions where we tackled some of the really thorny topics with where we thought there was going to be the most disagreement. So a big topic of conversation, for example, is where is it appropriate for technology and AI-enabled technology to potentially replace in-person care and support, and where is that not appropriate, and try to get through some of those really difficult issues. And off the back of those, we then came to a pre-meet day before an in-person summit to say, okay, what is our guidance that we can give out? What is the framework that we can launch, which we can say we all have managed to agree? As with any form of co-production, some people may wish we go further on it, but we had to say it's things that everybody, regardless of where you are within the health and care sector, would all be able to sign up to. And I believe that's on the next slide. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Caroline, or do you want to talk about the summit and what that looked like?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I am just wondering whether we should bring the tech pledge in here or maybe at the end of this. No, I think, yeah, I'll go into the Care Summit and then Daniel, I can hand over to you for the pledge. So the AI Social Care Summit that happened in March this year, it was a very co-produced summit. So that means, that all of the people who were part of this project, we really wanted to make sure that these are 2 days for all of us and that we walk away with something where we feel we are part of it and we know a bit more on how to actually translate it into the work that we are doing, whatever we're coming up with, and then also to co-produce the next steps. So that summit took place in Oxford, and what we did is we presented, first of all, the first day was part of the co-production that Katie just mentioned. The second day was to communicate whatever we had done and to present it to the world. And actually, we did have international representatives there too, but I'll get to that in a minute. First of all, we presented to the audience our definition of what responsible use of AI in social care actually means. So you've got the definition here. So it means that the use of AI systems in the care or related to the care of people supports and does not undermine, harm, or unfairly breach fundamental values of care, human rights, independence, choice and control, dignity, equality, and well-being. There are more values we could add to that. And one of the sticky points here was also, who's at the center of this? Is it the care of people, so people who are receiving care, people with lived and living experience of social care, and or people providing care? So, who's at the center of this? But this is the definition we are working with now, and how that is different to some of the very kind of like big narratives we have around AI and social care, is that this is all about centering on what we want to protect when it comes to caregiving. What does it mean to us? And I think what this definition shows is that social care is much more than a practical task and supporting people with activities of daily living or even emotional support. It's very much about how it supports people to live the lives that they want to lead as much as possible. And so it's all about the human. It's very human-centric. And many of the narratives we hear around AI and social care is how much more effective it can make social care and how much more efficient people will be. So it's very outcome-driven rather than value-driven. And this is, I think what defines us different to what we've got out there. So anyway, this is something that we presented and which is also part of the white paper that we published. And then also next slide, please. We presented the AI guidance that we had co-produced. So you'll see the different domains. And if you go into the sorry, it's not a very pretty slide. If you go into the document, you'll have it all there. But those are the domains that we together as a group identified as being the ones that need most focus and some of the main concerns that we've got around those. And you'll see that the AI guidance, again, takes that very collaborative way forward. So we're looking at people who draw on care and support, people who work in social care, care providers, and also tech providers. So in practice, next slide, please. You'll see that for each of the domains, then we defined the I and we statements for each of those groups of people. And we're very much hoping that this resource is supporting people already when it comes to, however they're part of the care community in their everyday lives. For example, if you're a provider of care, to create your own AI policy. But yeah, so we'd also love your feedback on this resource, and we are going to continue to revisit it. And I think it's a living piece of work as we are now understanding more of what good practice looks like. Next slide, please. The calls to action was another one of the, what we launched really during that day. And I will hand over to Katie and Daniel for that. And also, Katie, please feel free to add anything on the guidance or anything else that I forgot.
Sure, thanks, Caroline. Actually, there's a really good question in the chat, which I think would be helpful to mention here in terms of the guidance. So did many local authorities get involved, and did they have their own group? So we've talked extensively to local authorities, and both ADAS and the LGA were involved. There wasn't a specific local authority group because the LGA have been running these themselves as part of their knowledge hub, but we have been working with them and liaising really closely with them. So when we talk about providers of care, we're thinking that both in terms of commissioners of care as well as those who are providing direct care services as care homes, home care, supported living. Also very aware that there are some of the other regulated professionals in social care have their own guidance. So the British Association of Social Workers, for example, they were at our summit, they've been involved in our work, and they have published specific guidelines for social workers around responsible AI. So where there are sort of professional bodies who've been working in the space, we do work collaboratively with them, but realize they obviously have a role to their regulated workforce and sort of more specific support for them. So in terms of the call to action, I mentioned that, we co-produced this guidance and it's the things that we could all agree on, but there were certain things that we knew would need more work and we couldn't necessarily come to on the day. So we agreed that we would have calls to action, which we endorse and other people would be invited to endorse as well. So it starts off quite basic as we call for people to all use the I and we statement set out in our guidance to guide the use of generative AI in social care. And also importantly, to continue to work collaboratively on key issues in this area. I think it's really easy with emerging technology in particular for everyone to go running off in different directions. And if we want to have a really clear voice as a sector, I think we need to continue to talk and work together on this. We also believe that there is a significant role for government and for regulators to be active in this space. And so we would like the UK governments to continue to work with regulators to develop appropriate accountability structures and regulatory structures to govern the use of generative AI in social care. We're some way off this. We see more sort of regulation around sort of health technologies at the moment. But we feel that that's something that needs to happen. And the reason why we specify UK is because we had representatives from Scotland, Wales, and England who all came together, and also countries outside of the UK as well, to work in this space. And we're sort of seeing similar patterns across the different governments. Next slide, please. If you want to see the guidance in full and the calls to action in full, there are QR codes which are available. We also should mention, did receive a response from the Department of Health and Social Care about the new care technology standards, which were announced back in January as part of the Casey Commission. And as part of those new care tech standards, they did say that AI would be involved in that. So I appreciate that that's England centric, that particular one, but we know there's movement happening across Wales and Scotland too. And then I will pass to Daniel for the technology pledge, which I appreciate we've mentioned a couple of times that I haven't gone into detail for.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Caroline. Hi. First of all, just to look at the one of the comments in the chat from Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for that. Yeah, on the sandbox layer you're talking about, definitely something we need to talk about, because this is I'm really enthused by this, because when Katie and Caroline and I came together, we said actually one of the major points of this is people don't know what they don't know. What's the potential? What's the possibilities here? What areas can people look at? So we as care providers and care experts actually needed to go to people with some of the technical expertise. Says what's possible here. So there's excitement about the innovative uses of AI in social care. So we have to sort of temper that enthusiasm for innovation with actually this responsibility that we have in care. So we brought together about 20 to 30 social care technologists, say what they're doing in care, what they're doing with AI in care, and how can we bring them along so it's they develop ethically. And this is all voluntary. This is all voluntary about how people come together and they sign these. This is what I call a coalition of the willing. So we have to temper here the innovative urge and the need for transparency and clarity, so that we as involved in social care can actually see how AI is developing. So the other groups in this, we had the tech suppliers group, which I'm going to talk about, but it was necessary that we work on real true co-production with the people who draw on care and support, with the care workers, with the care care providers themselves, and with the government and regulatory bodies. So we brought together the tech providers, and together we decided on these issues that had to be part of an ethical pledge to social care. So we have a full roster of things that we want people to do, how they look at ethical innovation, what steps they take, and we're looking at how they actually involve people in that. And then we're very clear that there's got to be transparency. If people, now this is veering slightly away from what Caroline and Kate were talking about the use of generative AI, because this is technology specialists using AI as an integral part of the solutions and tools that they are designing for people to use in social care. And most of the digital tools that you're starting to use in care now, that we're starting to use in care now, will be looking at how AI can actually make what we're doing more efficient, actually more efficient and effective. That is very clear that one of the things we spoke about in the tech providers group, we have to be effective and efficient, because this has got to provide, there's no point in these developments if they don't actually provide value for us in care. So we're very focused on working with the other groups, the working groups, say as technologists, we can say what's possible, and then talk about that in a really innovative way. So all the points you see down there are points of the tech suppliers pledge. They passed, for me, the common sense test. They are clearly what people should be doing, and they should be shouting about it if they're doing it. There is an ISO standard as well, which many people are adhere to and have signed up to. So we're adding to that with specificities of social care, because there's the whole issue in the whole movement in social care of nothing about me without me is what we're trying to bring into tech suppliers for them to develop responsibly. And Kelly, so we should talk about we should talk about your work with AI and about what we can do, and we'll bring you together with the tech suppliers. So that's where we are at the moment. We're trying now. You have to realize that it's Katie, Carol, and I working very closely on this, and we've been developing as we go along. So we've been looking for either further resources, how we involve people, but this is a movement that's gaining traction and growing. And all three of us are talking, actually, strangely enough, internationally, because people are looking at this initiative internationally, saying, well, there's nothing like this, especially in any other industry or country where there's such an involvement of people using. So Katie's speaking in Ireland, Caroline's spoken in South Africa, at the UN. I'm speaking in the UAE at the end of the month, in the States as well. So people are looking at what we're doing in the UK about the ethical use of AI in social care. And it's a real model for social care internationally and for other sectors, other communities, which are seeing how to work together to provide innovative uses. So that's where we are with the Tech Pledge. It's something that's growing, and it's like it's a rolling stone which will gather more moss and more people and traction. If you can talk about it, we're happy to really say, if you're working with the tech solution providers, do they know about what's happening with the responsible use of AI in social care and the Oxford Initiative? So that's from me. I'm really open to questions. And Kelly, let's link up, definitely.
Daniel, yeah, that takes us. I'm just going to go really quickly through this so we have some time for questions. So the next steps is during the Care Summit, we, as a group of people who were there, thought it might be a good idea to create an alliance in AI and social care as one of the next steps. And that could be, first of all, again, it's all about co-production. So we continue to work in that collaborative way. But we want to work with people who are also, working on AI and social care. So I know, Kelly, you, for example, are working on sandboxes. There are some researchers from other universities and care providers and so on to actually come together under that alliance and to build a hub where we can support each other, where we can build good practice, where we can send our word out into the world. And importantly, what we're also wanting to create, and will create in the next few weeks or so, is a database in which we can collect quite qualitatively the experiences of using AI in social care. And that may be beneficial examples of how it has helped people in one way or another, or supported, but it can also be harms that people have experienced or risks that they have seen. And that's why is this needed? It's because many of the potential benefits, actual benefits and risks and harms of AI, we will only be able to see emerge. And we need to talk about them, because only if we know about people's experiences will we actually be able to see the whole picture. At the moment, it's sort of a little bit, looking into the dark of what is it actually going to do for us in practice and how is that going to work out. So that database will be a very important part of that. And we want to keep on informing policy and regulation and so on. But I think I'll stop talking now because I'm hoping that we can get your questions, but also to get you involved.
So we have some questions which already come through. Caroline, Daniel, I'll answer myself as well if I know them. So, so the Oxford Generative AI statement appears to focus on adult social care. Do we intend to publish anything similar for children's social care, as there's little guidance in this area too? I know the answer to this one. I don't know, Caroline, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, we've actually had that comment a lot. And I think that now under the Alliance, we have that opportunity to reach out and broaden out to children's social care and to draw on what maybe we've already got and say, oh, this is useful, or this isn't particularly useful. We need to reinvent also for children's social care here. So, we haven't gone there yet. But we would love to work with people and support people who want to do that piece of work. So I agree. I think it's really important. And also, for other groups, people with learning disabilities or so, just actually see how is it working, what we have produced, and widen out.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. We did have quite a long conversation when we first started this work, I think at the beginning of 2024, about whether it'd be appropriate for this to be both children's and adult services and to cover it. And the agreement we reached was that there wasn't enough expertise from children's services in the room for us to feel that it was really going to be representative of that part of the sector. So yeah, we'd be excited to extend into it, but that was the reason. It wasn't sort of we missed it off. We did just very intentionally go, we don't have enough experts in the room to say that this would cover children's services as well. And then this one, I'm hoping one of you two can answer because I'm not the technical one, but what safeguards are there to detect hallucinations? I know it can be tricky, but are there systems to re-verify the AI system's responses?
So there are systems being built to do that. And companies are also, the big companies, these providers are also working very hard to always improve these systems. But, in the end, I think the best safeguards against hallucinations are actually us humans knowing about the possibility and rechecking the information, especially when it's important. So, if it's in the context of caregiving, that is very important because, whatever information you may be using may be harming a person or yourself. So I think the best safeguard against hallucinations is still ourselves. But yes, from a technical point of view, there's a lot of work going on, developing new systems that can verify, that can help against hallucinations and so on. And the companies themselves are also trying to build or to improve their systems too.
And just doing some basic research, there are systems to detect hallucinations, but I promote what Caroline says. We shouldn't. The problem with anything that we've always generated be it on the internet or something we see on screen, we tend to trust it inherently, and we should always be questioning. Because I am concerned that we take what we're given here and just republish things, whereas we really have to focus on skilling ourselves. Different skill sets are coming into play here, where we should be forensically looking at anything that we generate via AI. We should be forensically looking through it to actually test it rather than just accepting. And I fear that we're actually moving into people just accepting. So I think there's a whole generational existential educational thing that we need to do here. So it's just a lot wider than what we're doing, Guthrie. But there are systems being generated to test for hallucinations, but really rigorousness in what we do and not laziness, I think, is something that we need to promote.
Yeah, and there's a really good comment in the chat as well from Cherry. Thank you, Cherry, to say that when writing a prompt for AI, you can include a request for it to include its sources with clickable links. Then yes, you can check those links and to make sure it's trusted. So don't just trust that the links are all right. Do click on those links. But I think that is a really good point. Yeah. Then we have a question, which is, has there been a recommended AI system to be used in social care so far? I'll be clear. So we don't endorse software as an alliance. That's not really for us to do. But there are lots and lots of pilots which are ongoing and which have got quite extensive write-ups and ongoing evaluation. We have a full resources page, which we will send out via email to all of you after this, actually, with the notes, where you can find lots and lots of case studies of the pilots which are happening. Sorry, Daniel, I spoke over you there.
No. I'd say there is no recommend. I would recommend, because the people who have shown an ethical approach to it, the tech suppliers that are signed up to the tech pledge, because they have committed to that being ethical and working with you. So that's one. While it's not a kite mark, it doesn't really. We can't develop that. That's a step too far. These are people who are looking at responsibly and ethically working with you on this. So that's one guide for you, Sid. And can we put in the chat how people can see who the short suppliers are? Not short suppliers. Sorry, the tech suppliers signed up to the pledge are. I'm just trying to think.
Yes, we will put a link into the chat. Actually, Iris has put a link to the tech suppliers pledge already, and that's got a list of all of the companies who have already signed up to the pledge about being responsible and how they develop AI.
And just to add there, though, so we are also doing work. I think what's really important with these pledges is generally not just ours, is that people can sign up to these things, but we also really want to make sure that people are actually adhering to what they have said they would do, because otherwise, you can say it's meaningless. So I think it's also really important to know what questions to ask of the tech providers that you are thinking of using or so. And Katie, is there such resource yet? It's not something we have developed yet, but what questions should you ask of AI providers? So yeah, I don't know whether you or Daniel, know any of that kind of resource.
So
but we should develop it. Katie.
We absolutely should develop more. There is some basic guidance on the Digitising Social Care website, which I'll put a link in, which we co-produce with care providers. There's also a link to a template AI policy, but it does need some further work. And that was a question also in the chat. So yes, there are some templates. But that's something we really need to focus on. We also know that there's a lot more work which needs to be done around sort of guidance around AI and cybersecurity. That's a question I mainly work with care providers like care homes and home care that we get asked a lot. So definitely something we have on our radar for further work at this time.
And also, Katie mentioned that we are on good terms and talking very closely with the Department for Health and Social Care on the standards, so that we would like this to be an inherent part of the standards that are being developed. So we've got to watch that space, because that's a developing movement at the moment.
And then a final question which has come through. We're running out of time. If there is anything else, please do put it in the chat and we can come back to you via email. But just to round off, so are there opportunities to link up with NHS colleagues in this space?
Well, we do in some ways, but it's not in an organised fashion, I would say. There is a link up and overlap, but not as much as maybe there should be. I don't know. It's a good question though, and I'm not going to give you a great answer, but if there are people we should be talking to, and we do reach out, but you're right, there is still a bit of a differentiation between people working in NHS and working in social care, and we need to close that gap generally.
And I would agree. And if you were looking specifically for NHS AI guidance, there is the NHS AI Lab, which has done a lot of work, obviously, in this space. And the NHS also have an AI ambassadors network, which I do go to those when I can join, because it's very, very interesting. It's quite health focused, but there are resources there. And again, these are things that we can make sure to send out to you. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Just to quickly round off then, as I mentioned, this is part of a series. We know there's lots of different questions happening around artificial intelligence at the moment, and we hope to keep the conversation going. So our next one on the 25th of September is AI in Social Care, Help or Hype, where we'll have care providers and commissioners come to talk about the different AI tools that they are using and how they find it helpful, what they haven't found has been working for them, and to share some of the case studies about what that looks like for them. The 30th of September, we'll do Pledge or Perish, which is a deep dive into the Tech Suppliers Pledge, including having some of the companies who were involved in developing that to talk about why it was important to them and the process, and why they felt it was important from an industry perspective to really get AI right for the sector. And then a little bit of a gap, because there's a lot of conferences in October, but the 23rd of October, we have Green Code, Clean Conscience, tackling AI's environmental impact. Something we haven't yet published a huge amount on, but it's a question that we get asked a huge amount, is what is the environmental impact of AI and how much do we need to be concerned about it? So we will be tackling that at the end of October. All of these, the link is in the chat, and again, this will come out to you afterwards. So thank you, everybody, very much for coming. It's been lovely to have so many of you here today. The recording and slides will be sent out to you. And Caroline, Daniel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Great questions as well.
Really good questions. Yeah. And yeah, thank you, Fiona, as well, for helping out behind the scenes. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Fiona.
Brilliant. And take care. Have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.